Thank you, by the way, everyone, for being real quiet during the prelude. Everyone's really getting that. Just a quick message, quick announcement before we begin. Could the owner of the black Harley-Davidson motorcycle out there please give me a ride on that thing sometime? That is quite... Who is that? Alrighty. Well, good morning, everyone. How is everyone bearing up? It's funny. It's like, oh, can you hear me? Okay. It's like the sunshine kind of belies the state of the world right now. That we come in here, and I really appreciate it on a sunny day that everybody showed up. So, in the past week, I have heard two competing visions of how we ought to make our way in the world right now. One is all resistance all the time, and the other is the news is not your life. So the first one, all resistance all the time, comes from a blogger named Jason Kotke, whose newsletter I subscribe to. It's full of wonderful, quirky insights about arts and culture and science. But the whimsy for Jason is now out the window. Jason has shifted to a full court press of political resistance. His whole blog is devoted to gathering the most trenchant analysis of what's happening south of the border. And as the tenants upstairs, it's our duty as Canadians to be maximally informed at a time like this and maximally girded for resistance. The other perspective, the news is not your life, comes from this fellow, Oliver Burkeman. Some of you will have heard of him, another wonderful writer who questions whether we actually need to be busting a hump to stay on top of every scrap of the latest awful breaking news, because that's a battle we can never win. You know, the media is a titanic machine generating, as Oliver puts it, a bottomless news feed of far more suffering than St. Francis of Assisi himself was ever asked to care about. If you try, the only sure thing is that you're going to feel like crap for not doing more. Oliver asks, instead of feeling like worthless pawns in the face of these massive geopolitical shifts rolling over us, what if we stand up straight and take this bit of counsel to heart? Your best is enough. There's nothing you ever have to do to earn your spot on this planet. Okay, so I find both those views compelling. Call them the way of the warrior versus the way of the monk. Which is the right move right now? Well, I would say it depends. These big emotions are welling up in us, and we can't ignore them. They have to go somewhere. For you, that may mean hitting the streets and screaming bloody murder. My own preference is to channel those emotions in a way that's less point-blank direct, which brings us to today's service. The subject on the table today is failure, and you will hear tales of foibles and faceplants, many of them my own. But the message we're building to is that messing up is really okay. That's one advantage of believing, as many of us do, that there's no heavenly scorekeeper assigning demerit points to us every time we slip up. We have a right to be here in all our warts and all humanness. We cannot be kicked out. We cannot be sacked if we don't declare to somebody's Muskian satisfaction 5 useful things we did this week to justify our rightful place on the planet. And so we muddle through, humbly, vulnerably, commiserating, sharing our stories, loving imperfectly, in community, leaning on each other. Shall we sing? This is number 1021 in your program.
Oh
Welcome again, everybody. My name is Bruce Grierson. I'm thrilled to be your service leader this morning. As part of our ongoing experiment in distributed ministry here, as Mary Bennett mentioned last week, we are the largest Unitarian congregation in Canada without an ordained minister. And that we are making it work, and I think we're making it work, is only because a lot of people have their shoulder to the wheel here. A lot of different skills and gifts and perspectives and ideologies and strategies are in play. That plurality is our secret sauce. It just might be the secret sauce of religion itself going forward. One of the things we try to do here, we really strive to do, is to create a welcoming community. So if you're visiting us for the first time, and I see some new faces, thank you, I hope you will feel that. And if you're a returning customer punching your loyalty card, I hope you can still feel that. We take all comers, no matter what you do, or where you came from, or how you vote, or who you love. There's nothing you have to do to earn your spot on the planet, and there's nothing you have to do to earn your spot in this congregation. We're happy you're here. Here on the ancestral territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First People. It's land we're grateful to be able to work and play and worship on. So we have a little treat for you today. Megan Mitchell's going to be in the mix. She has a wonderful little story to share with you in a couple of moments. But right now we begin with a ritual that most Unitarian Universalist congregations share. We're going to light our chalice, and I'm going to ask Allison to help me with that. Oop, has she deked out? She left. Oh, there you are. Oh, hello. You want to? I'm so sorry. I should have reminded. I was leaning on you and you had to go on. Okay. Thank you so much. So, here we go. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. Our second candle is the candle of joys and sorrows. Well, here's a joy. Inga Batrich will celebrate her birthday on March the 6th. She will be turning 97. I was going to say, Sonia, you have a chase pack, and Inga's at the front of it. Although I don't see Sonia here today. Bummer. Anyone have any other joys they'd like to share?
Carrie's birthday.
Carrie's birthday. Oh, fantastic. Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Today, because you have 22 family members.
Oh, my gosh. And Claude, too.
He's not here either.
Oh, no. Okay. Maybe they're off doing something together, those two. Okay. And then inevitable shift in tone as we light the candle of global concerns. So the U.S. has cut more than 90% of its international aid programs. A lot of agencies learned that they'd been axed in a letter that simply said, continuing this program is not in the national interest. So I guess the principle, I am my brother's keeper, is also not in the national interest. America's going, we no longer feel inclined to share the fruits of our prosperity. And of course, it's their prerogative to do that. But it's hard to think of very many people who would call that behavior great. Millions will die. Political chaos will spread across the developing world. It is monumentally disheartening. Now, I don't want to introduce Megan's story on such a low note, so let's put a minute of silence between these developments and the next segment of our program here this morning. So, hopes, prayers, sadness, private outrage, whatever emotions are welling up in you, I invite you to send that energy out silently to wherever it is you park your most sacred thoughts.
So Bruce asked me to share a story of failure, and what immediately came to mind was something that happened to me 23 years ago. So clearly this still haunts me a little bit. This was in 2002. I was in my first year of high school, so I was in grade 8, and I was 13. I had the same science teacher for all 5 years. So grade 8, 9, and 10 science was taught in French, and then I had chemistry 11 and 12 with him. He had a PhD in organic chemistry, so he was very serious about the sciences, and he really instilled that in his students as well. So grade 8 science class, we had a quiz on the anatomy of the eye. And instead of studying the night before, I joined my brother downstairs to watch a movie on TV called Dude, Where's My Car? I don't know if they found the car, but subsequently, I got a big fat 0 on the quiz the next day. We marked the quiz in class, and Dr. Maurice went around and collected all of them, and he was rifling through the pile looking at the marks, and he saw my 0, and he just looked at me, absolutely disappointed, full of disdain, and slightly horrified. And I'll never forget that feeling. I can still feel it right now, actually, while I'm telling this story. So I guess I learned from that, well, don't watch a crappy movie on TV the night before a quiz, and maybe you should study a little bit. Dr. Maurice was so dedicated to teaching his students. In the 5 years that I had him, he only missed 2 days of school. Once when his kiddo was born, and twice when he was hospitalized with kidney stones. So fast forward to grade 12, I'm in chemistry class with him, and he told us he was going to miss the following class to join the Physics 11 students on their field trip to Playland. So we were going to have a substitute teacher. I decided I was going to skip that class because that would kind of be a waste of my time. So the following week, I show up to class, Dr. Maurice is back, and he's looking at the attendance sheet, and he says, "Oh, Miss Mitchell, I see you no-showed last week. I'll see you after school." So I show up for detention, and he's making me do questions out of the textbook. And I said, "Dr. Maurice, you've known me for 5 years. I show up for your class. You show up for your class. The one time I no-show because we have a substitute teacher who's probably just going to be playing hangman with us on the chalkboard, I no-show. You should take this as a compliment." And he said, "Good point. You can go."
Okay, that is just so great. I gotta ask you, are you still in touch with Dr. Mitchell after all these years? Wow. You'll have to go out for a beer with them. I totally love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and it actually kind of dovetails kind of nicely with what we're talking about the rest of the way here. All righty. So, right after the great stock market crash of 2007 to 2008, remember that one? I pitched a story to Psychology Today magazine about failure. Everyone was bummed out and looking for insight, and I thought, who better to turn to for wisdom and consolation than a poet? This gentleman. I was a fan of this guy, Philip Schultz, and he'd just come out with a collection called Failure. I called him up, and we talked about how the book had come about. A lot of the poems in there were about his father, who was a larger-than-life character, a salesman. I think he sold vending machines. And he was always hustling some new thing, but everything always went sideways at some point. And Philip's father died bankrupt and, as he said, emotionally destitute when Philip was 18. So Philip had struggled to write honestly about his father, but the emotions were too raw, the shame was too hot. But finally he went there. And when he did, everything changed. The poems became electric. The real subject, here had always been failure, he said, his as well as my own. And by the way, Philip Schultz was not a major poet, but I wouldn't have called him a failure. I was gobsmacked by his humility. The magazine ended up running the piece as a cover story. But here's the irony. In the end, they balked at the title. They chickened out. My title for it had been Epic Fail, but that was too negative in their mind. So they changed it to Weathering the Storm, because it has to be a happy ending, right? The world loves a failure story, but only in retrospect. You can tell tales of woe as long as it's from the perch of your eventual triumph. We weather storms. They never wash us out to sea. But of course, that's not true, right? It happens all the time. You just never hear from the people who got washed out to sea because they disappear from the public record. Psychologists tell us there are three main human drives. They are survival, connection, and status. Survival's first. You get your basic needs met. And then after that, you go looking for connection. You find your peeps. And then number 3 kicks in, status. You cement your place in the group through your virtue and your competence. So when we screw up, that's a big problem for us at an existential level. Red flags go up in our subconscious. We're going, uh-oh, my status is threatened here. What good am I to this group, to this family, to this marriage, to this community? And by the way, those alarm bells in our own mind, the culture reinforces them. The culture tells us that making mistakes is bad, it's wrong. Especially when it isn't just bad luck, it was bad judgment. Then your very character is coming into question. It's a moral failing, and there can be a lot of guilt. And by the way, here's where the Catholics have a leg up. They have advanced spiritual technology here, the confession booth. You confess your sins, you're forgiven, and that's it. Done and dusted. The rest of us are left to wring our hands and worry whether the next screw-up will get us cast out of the tribe and we'll end up living in a van by the river. It's kind of ridiculous, right? To worry about this so much, because the fact is, we're all making mistakes all the time. There's a funny quote, I think it's a Chesterton quote, about the difference between liberals and conservatives. A liberal is someone who keeps making the same mistakes over and over. A conservative is someone who prevents mistakes from getting corrected. All right. Some years ago, a couple of colleagues and I started going out for lunch on a semi-regular basis, like every couple of months or so. We were renting offices near each other in Gastown. We'd worked together at the same magazine, and now we had gone out on our own to see if we could make it as freelancers. They were a team, like Rogers and Hart or Nichols and May, and I was going it solo. And we used these lunches to kind of buck each other up, give each other encouragement. Like, you guys are geniuses. It's only a matter of time before you blaze across the sky. And we meant it. We were each other's biggest fans. Each time we met, the question in the air, which never really got broached until the end of the meal, was, any big breakthroughs? Invariably, the answer was, not yet. At one point, I had 3 book pitches in a row that my agent hadn't been able to sell. The way publishers look at it, your past predicts your future, and the numbers for the last book were decent, but as Sam put it, not exciting. And the longer you go without a hit, the harder it is to sell you. As for Paul and Mike, they always seemed tantalizingly close to escape velocity. They had a high-powered agent. They worked in multimedia, so they had a foot in Hollywood. One or the other was always flying down to Burbank to pitch a TV show. But at the last minute, the seemingly sure thing would always just fail to get over the finish line. And after a while, it became kind of funny. I can't remember which of us coined the term first, but somebody sent an email with the subject line, "Loser's Lunch." when scheduling the next one, I guess we figured if we named it, we could tame it. When's the next Loser's Lunch, boys? So, over increasingly more Spartan meals, we would share ideas about how to get off the schneid, how to break our respective slumps. One day I said, this would be a good idea for a book, rock bottom, the trials and terrors of writers just before they busted through. It'd be like an inspirational hang in there kind of thing, like, you can do this, you aspiring writer, yes, you will be poor, yes, you will suffer, but this is your calling, you have no choice, you just have to stay above ground and do the work. Illustrated. We tried to keep it light, like, hey, we used to live paycheck to paycheck, but now, through hard work and perseverance, we live direct deposit to direct deposit. But you could tell that the extended dry spell was getting to us. One day, one of us put the question to the group, do you think your kids think you're a success? We each had 2 young children. It occurred to us that they never knew us when we were in the big leagues. Like my own kids, they've only known me as someone who sits in a big green chair every day and toils away quietly in obscurity, rarely travels, isn't talking to Margaret Atwood or Buzz Aldrin or John Irving. That was a lifetime ago. The cloud of social information coming off Dad says, this guy's not exactly making a dent in the universe. Paul and Mike were flirting with the same thoughts. The glory days, gracing the cover of the Village Voice, winning all kinds of awards for their wildly innovative multimedia work, was like those days are gone, and it looked like they weren't coming back. But here's the thing. We all knew it was important not to lean too far into this identity we had adopted as losers. We tried to keep each other on the right side of the border between guilt and shame. Here's the difference. And it has to do with the reason you're assigning to why your failure occurred. Guilt says, it's something I did. Shame says, it's something I am. Guilt can be good. It can be productive in terms of giving us a kick in the butt and nudging a new strategy. Shame is toxic. The idea that I failed because of something I just globally am, well, if we allowed ourselves to drift there, then we were out beyond the lifeguards. So just to shift gears a second, let me ask you, do you detect anything changing around the way we think about and talk about failure as a culture? Do you feel like the taboo around it may be weakening just a bit? Maybe. I'm thinking the taboo around, copping to our mistakes. I think maybe things are changing a bit, and not in the phony baloney Silicon Valley tech bro fail faster way, which is just really about peacocking what a badass you are. I'm actually starting to see an effort among serious people to be transparent about their failures. My friend Christy Ashwanden, who's a science writer, has been trying to get scientists to embrace their failures as a badge of honor, because that's how science works, right? You should be able to swing for the fences, and whatever happens is data, and all data is good. Christy says there should be an award in the scientific community for the best ideas that turned out not to be true. It would be a consolation prize for your paper never getting published. A Princeton professor named Johannes Haushofer did a brave thing recently. He made a failure resume, a list of all the degree programs that rejected him, all the journals that turned him down, all the fellowships and awards he didn't win. It went viral. And he's now a little bemused that this has gotten more attention than all his academic work combined. So that's the thing about failure. It's a good thing. It should be a good thing as long as you learn from it. Okay. This is the majestic Tacoma Narrows Bridge, the 3rd largest suspension bridge in the world when it was built in 1940. But if you look closely, you'll see something's a bit weird there. And you'll see maybe why it's now known more popularly as Galloping Gertie. Something's happening on the bridge deck there. What happened during the grand unveiling of the bridge, actually it was a couple of months later, was that a windstorm came up. Not a huge windstorm, gusts were like 35 miles an hour, but the wind revealed a design flaw in the bridge, and the wind set the bridge in motion just a bit, and it started to sway. And the bridge deck started to twist. That's what you can sort of see in that picture. They call it corkscrewing. And the twisting and the swaying and the oscillating just kept increasing in amplitude for real until the bridge deck tore apart and the whole thing plummeted into Puget Sound. The only fatality, fortunately, was a Cocker Spaniel named Tubby. An engineer said later, the best thing that can happen for bridges in general is the worst thing that can happen for any individual bridge. It fails. It's only from careful analysis of the wreckage that we can figure out what went wrong and make sure things go right in the future. And by the way, this bridge was not designed by a piker. It was the same engineer who designed the Golden Gate Bridge. Somehow that makes us all feel better, although I'm not sure exactly why. So civil engineering is like the commercial airline industry. It's as safe as it is because of its failures. These disasters had to happen in the wild, and then you make sure they never happen again. You take the feedback and adjust. And that's something Philip Schultz, the poet, told me too. He said, our failures can't help us if we're oblivious to them. He thought that's what prevented his dad from ever breaking his losing streak. He said, my father wasn't the least bit self-aware. He was addicted to failure without even knowing he was one. If you'd asked him, he would have said, who, me? Anyone recognize this fella? So this is Jonathan Haidt, and for the same magazine story I talked to Philip, I talked to Jonathan. He's a UPenn psychologist, and his hobby horse at the time was that we're over-coddling our kids. Like, we do the kids no favors by not letting them fail, right? So Haidt had cooked up something he called the adversity hypothesis. Basically, you've got to face setbacks because they provide the resistance for you to reach the highest levels of your personal development. Post-traumatic growth, you sometimes see this called. And the more he investigated this, the more he became convinced of the almost magical properties of failure. I asked him, does failure build character? And he said, well, it certainly reveals character in the sense that people often surprise themselves by how much tough stuff they are able to bear. And then after you've borne it, after you've crashed and survived, the circle defining what's manageable for you expands. And what he said next has stayed with me. He said, failure can initiate a search for meaning, and sometimes that means a realignment of values. I said, how so? He said, well, suppose you've just gone broke. That registers as a wicked hit in the work and achievement file of your identity. But your mind has a strategy to fix that. Your psychic immune system snaps into action. It's like, yeah, I just cratered in this one dimension of my life, but luckily we have more than one. We actually have 4 main dimensions of our lives. Work achievement is one, but there's also community, spirituality, and legacy. And the cool thing is, when we pooch it in one area, and by the way, I think this is my language, not his. When we blow it in one area, all our energy rushes to the 3 remaining parts of the portfolio, and they get stronger. So, in this case, you just went bankrupt. And yeah, the achievement dimension of you took a huge hit. But great news! Achievement is actually the thing that's least correlated with lasting happiness. Material success makes us happy for a short while, and then, the hit wears off. But these other values, like community and spirituality and service/legacy, these seem to be longer-acting medicine. That's what the research shows. So if you're someone who's been a workaholic all your life, and you sacrificed relationships, you sacrificed connection, and suddenly your work blows up, your life can now coalesce around a higher purpose. And damned if this new life doesn't feel like an upgrade. Haidt said, people sometimes rebuild beautifully those parts of their lives that they could never have taken down voluntarily. Oh, A guy called Sam West created this place, the Museum of Failure, a collection of 170 or so failed innovations. It's been a huge success. It travels around from town to town. On one stop, somebody asked Sam, how do you choose the items in there? I mean, lots of things fail. What's your criteria? What makes the bar? And Sam said, well, I evaluate a failure based on what the expectations for it were. So the big ticket items in the museum are things like the Segway, Google Glass, New Coke. These are things that came into the world with massive hype, right? Remember, the Segway was supposed to be to change the world as much as the internet. They failed because they had so far to fall. So what's the moral here? If you don't want to fail, keep your expectations low. Make sure your high wire walk is only 2 inches off the ground. I can't fail if nobody ever expected me to succeed. It doesn't feel very good. That kind of bet hedging, it's not what we were put here on earth for, I don't think. In the Museum of Failure, whether or not you make the podium as the biggest loser depends on how high the expectations were for you to win. So going back to Megan's story, Dr. Maurice was shocked when she laid an egg on that exam because he expected so much more of her. 2 things were conveyed there. I'm disappointed in you, and also, you fell short of the extremely high regard I hold you in. And it's that second part that matters, the extremely high regard I hold you in. That, ideally, is the way we should take a failure. And Megan, I hope that's the way you took it. Because suddenly it's a net positive. This person's disappointment revealed something wonderful about my own potential. Dr. Maurice lobbed a criticism with a compliment at the center of it, with a gift at the center of it. Multiple gifts, really. One of them, just one of them, is a story you carried in your back pocket for 23 years so you could re-gift it here today to us. Self-respect, man. To reward ourselves for trying, that's called self-respect. Principle number 1 of Unitarian Universalists, respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all humans. Sometimes we forget that that includes ourselves. I talked about having considered writing a book on failure, and it would be bomb-proof because it could not fail, right? If it sold well, great. If it flopped, it would prove the premise and thereby be a success. And then I learned that a guy kind of did write that book, a guy called Scott Sandage, and the book's called Born Losers. Now, this gentleman is no loser. He's a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, but in his spare time, he tried to hatch a bunch of big ideas off the side of his desk, innovations and apps and startups, and none of them succeeded. His conclusion, and I think it's sort of the thrust of the book, is that we need to think about failure differently. Not condemn it, but also not throw a pity party for it. The right attitude around failure, to his mind, is not sympathy or commiseration. It's just the acknowledgement that something great happened here. Something great and invisible happened here. It's just a byproduct of the thing you were trying to make and failed. What happened was learning. Learning happened. And learning is the true currency of a life of depth and meaning and purpose. You really don't need that much more. Pema Chodron said we need to take failure for what it is, just the natural state of the world. Every failure, she said, is like a little death. A little death. And our job as humans is to cultivate the ability to not fear it, to stand in there when everything's coming a cropper and there's not much you can do, to stay with the shakiness, as she puts it, stay with a broken heart, with a rumbling stomach, with a hopelessness and a strong urge for revenge that you don't act on, to get the knack for relaxing in the midst of chaos, to learn not to panic. That is the practice. And if you can do it, the kinds of discoveries you make have nothing to do with believing in anything. They have only to do with the courage to die continually. There's a Buddhist idea of maitri, M-A-I-T-R-I, that's central to all of this, I think. If I understand it right, it means something like what we reach for when we're in crisis. But it's not a crutch in a Westerny, self-helpy kind of way. It's more like a state of equanimity, like none of this is really about you. You're not looking for a solution, for a fix, because there is no fix. You're not striving to make the pain go away or become a better person. You're just coming to understand that whatever happens is not the beginning or the end. It's just the braid of tragedy and triumph that's so tight you can't tell which is which, but that everyday people have been wrapped up in since the beginning of time. So, speaking of braids, just to tie up the loose ends here, it's my sad duty to tell you that the Losers Lunch Club has disbanded. What happened was the other two guys, their creative partnership split. Paul explained it like this. He said, "We always had so many plates spinning that there was always some cash coming in. What we didn't count on is that they all might stop spinning at once. We still meet individually, but we can't call them losers' lunches anymore because it feels like it takes three to make a community. And also because the term losers' lunch is no longer really serving us. It's not accurate. It's kind of not funny anymore, either funny ha-ha or funny ironic. It misses the point of what we have, what we've developed all these years. See, the great superpower of failure is that it is affiliative. When people go through trials together, they become closer. There's a Sanskrit word, mudita. Lila knows this one. It has no direct translation in English, so the best way to understand it is by its opposite, schadenfreude. That's when you secretly take pleasure in the misfortune of others. Mudita is sometimes defined as sympathetic joy. When I take pleasure in the fortune of others, your happiness is my happiness. When you succeed, my world gets a little brighter too. Paul and Mike and I, we genuinely felt that for each other. We loved each other. We loved each other. And we still do. And as for Philip Schultz, the poet, not long after he and I talked on the phone, his collection, Failure, won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry. So that's awkward. Not really. It's awesome. And here's where I'm supposed to stick the landing, with a final line that closes like the trunk of a Mercedes, surprising yet inevitable. And yet that would be a success. So, no, the end.
Birds they sing at the break of day, start again. I heard them say, don't dwell on what is passed away, or what is yet to be. Yeah, the wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again and bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. So ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. You asked for signs. The signs were sent. The birth betrayed, the marriage spent. The widowhood of every government. Signs for all to see. I can't run no more with that lawless crowd, while killers in high places say their prayers out loud. But they've summoned up a thundercloud. They're gonna hear from me. So ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Add up the parts, you won't have the sum. Strike up the march, there is no drum. Every heart to love will come. But like a refugee, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. 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 That's how the light gets in.
We have a new outreach recipient this month. It's Hollyburn Community Services Society's programs for youth who are in crisis or experiencing barriers to housing or employment or basic life opportunities. One of their initiatives is North Shore Youth Safe House, one of the emergency stopgaps that is a place of refuge for youths 13 to 18 with transitional support to ease youth back into the community. This is important work. Please give as generously as you're able. For these gifts and all that you do to keep this House of the Rising Sun rising, we thank you. Alrighty, we are a busy congregation. There's a lot going on at the moment. Check your e-bulletin for updates, but here are a few things that I think are worth propping up in the shop window. First of all, there's lunch downstairs today. Diane Hicks has laid out her usual spread of delicious sandwiches. Suggested donation is $5, best deal in town. Marie Bensley has a memorial service here in the church Saturday at 2 p.m. So put that on your calendar. We have Adopt a Plant going. I sometimes pull Marcia up for this, but I'll just telling you, we're inching toward our fundraising goal for our resiliency garden here. But exciting opportunities to help are still available. 30 Bones gets you your own plant, which is a bit like having your own star or your own acre on the moon. It doesn't really, it's symbolic. But please see Marcia or Jim if you would like to donate to that. Barry is going to tell you about a musical coming up at the Cultch that is worth your attention.
One of the things that we are trying to do here is to gather community on a regular basis to see things, talk about things, and just generally have a community that's interested in stuff. And Friday night was an example of that with a movie night. We had Il Postino, which was a very interesting film for those of you who are here. But there's this thing coming up called Children of God, which is a musical play that's being produced and put on at the Cultch, the York Theatre and the Cultch, which is on Commercial. This is one of the most powerful plays I've ever seen. And I would encourage everyone here to go. It's about residential schools, and it's unbelievable. There are a number of people that have gone and have felt really moved by seeing this. So what Pamela Berg, who is working with me, I'm working with her, on trying to build community and build things that we can go to, we thought this would be a fabulous something for our congregation to go to, members of our congregation to go to, individually or collectively, however you want. It's being shown on the 21st of March until the 29th of March, and it's a whole week. It's a Saturday to Saturday, I believe, or Friday to Saturday. And on the 29th, which is the Sunday following the last performance, we're going to have a talk back about it here in the church following the service. So it's an opportunity for everybody to go. There are some very inexpensive seats. There's $29 seats that are available, and they range in price, but there are $29 seats. And I would encourage everyone to go. There's a poster about it in the hallway. You'll get it in the e-bulletins. And I would encourage you to go and then come on the Sunday to talk about it. One other thing that I can sneak in here, I hope, Bruce, is we have Care and Concerns team in our congregation, and it's led by Shirley McDonald and coordinated also with Leslie Gibbons. If you have any need for that, please feel free to, or somebody that needs some kind of assistance or care or some reach out from the congregation, feel free to reach out to Shirley or Leslie. And also we have established a new position called the Crisis Care Coordinator, and that's Catherine Nicholson sitting right over there. So if anybody is in crisis or you know somebody that needs some help, talk to Shirley or Leslie and they will get in touch with Catherine. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. I think I'm planning to go to that, no doubt about it. This is one that has no slides, so I'll just sneak it in. Linda Pratt says, the grocery program is doing well, thanks to everyone who's been contributing grocery slips. If you want more information about that, talk to Linda. And the slide you're seeing there is for next Sunday. This looks really good. Next week, Sue Forbes invites us to contemplate how do we genuinely make the effort to see and hear one another such that we shrink the distance between us. It seems essential to the project of beloved community we have going here. Please join us and share your thoughts. And now, as we bring it to a close with a little more Leonard, everyone knows this one. Let's sing it together.
I sang it for the basins.
You can stay standing. I think we should after that. Just a few more final words. I'm going to repeat a line that Sue used last week after she noted that our UU principles are being trampled all over the world right now. Tyranny requires our complicity. Democracy requires our courage. A lot is being asked of us now. We're here to encourage each other to find ways to express our powerful feelings in a way that feels right to us individually. But know this, you are enough. Your efforts will be measured under the aspect of eternity. There is no test you have to take to earn your place on this planet. And anyway, they could never kick you out for failing. May it ever be so. Let's circle around.